Hey, I'm Andy Aledort. In this edition of Indeed, we're going to continue our look at triads and triadic shapes and then start to get into how to use those for soloing. Last month, I talked about major triadic shapes, major triads, within an E blues in the key of E, and we looked at the three chords E, A, and B. So the next thing to do, it would be a good thing to do, would be to play from E to A to B in each one of those close voiced positions, meaning same three strings, same area of the neck, before moving to the next part of the neck. And you got to memorize these. It's a lot of memorization. We're going to do some other lessons where we start to utilize these shapes in licks, and that's when it'll probably start to stick more. But for now, you've just got to look at them as grips and as shapes. Try to memorize those shapes and also note names on the fretboard. You know, it can come slowly, but if you do it every day and you stick with it, it'll start to, it'll stay with you. You'll be able to look down at the board and see these shapes and know what they are. All right, so the three chords in an E blues are E, A, and B. You know, normally you might play E down here, A here, and B here. What we're going to do is we're going to just stick with the triads for now. So we have E to A to B to 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 E to A to E. So make sure you memorize how those go together. Let's move over to the next three strings. 4, 3, 2. Move over to the next group. And now the last group. So most blues songs are based on what you call dominant chords, which would be seventh chords. So if you're in E, like E7, in the key of E, A7 would be the 4 chord, and B7 would be the 5 chord. So let's look at seventh shapes, dominant seventh shapes, based on triads first, just in the key of E, all over the board, and then I'm going to talk to you about how to use those shapes in the way you put licks together for solos. In this way, we're going to use those areas of the board where we look down and we see our triadic chord shapes, and then we build licks from those. So we don't have to be trapped in our typical positions for soloing. All right, let's start on the top three strings as we had done with the triad shapes, the straight major triads. And E major triad are the notes G sharp, B, and E. So let's turn this into a dominant shape, dominant seventh. So we have E, D natural, and E. And that's like, many of you know either E7 like that, or E7 like that. This is just the top of it. So if you use the approach that we had used before, where each note we're going to call this a triad because it's a 3-note chord. It's a dominant 7th triad. What we did before was each note went to the next note in the triad. So G sharp would go to B, D would go to E, and E would go to G sharp. So actually what happens when you move from this to the next available note is you don't have a dominant triad shape anymore. You have a regular major triad. For the moment, that's okay, and you'll see why. So we start with this. Then B is going to go to D. E is going to go to G sharp. G sharp's going to go to B. So we have this. And then D is going to go to E. G sharp's going to go to B. And B is going to go to D. You have this. And then if we move up again, you have that. So let's run those together. Okay. So there's one little twist that we can do, and that is, instead of having a major triad for our second chord, we're going to keep that D note for both of them. So we'll have this, and this note will go up, and this note will go up, but we're going to keep our D. So we go from this, this. If we do that, now when we ascend, we're going to end up with some different shapes. Because when we went from this, the next shape was this. If we could move up from this, then the next shape will be this. Which is also a useful shape. And then if we move up from this, the next shape is this. And now what happens is if we move up from this, then your triad falls over here because not that there's anything wrong with any of these things. You need to know this shape is just as valuable as this shape, and this shape is just as valuable as that shape, as that shape, as that shape, as that shape. So if I were soloing, I want to use, for demonstration purposes, the G sharp, the D, so the major third, the D, the flat 7, and the E as my notes of emphasis. So if we were playing a shuffle, slow shuffle, and I wanted those 3 notes to be the notes I'm going to emphasize, I could go a lick like that. So to me, this comes in handy, or the triad shape comes in handy, because I know I have an understanding of why those notes sound cool. So if we go here, if we were soloing over the same, and we want to emphasize those notes, I might go one more time. So this shape is at the heart of that lick I just played. And I can even go back to the shape at the end of the lick. All right. When we had this shape and we moved up to the next shape, that was our shape. If you have a lick coming off of this, and you want to emphasize those notes, the D here, this flat 7, the major third G sharp there, and the 5th there, you could play. So I went. Stop there. G sharp. Stop there. So each little group of notes, 2 or 3 notes at a time, stops and emphasizes one of those dominant triadic tones. So this is where it is useful in creating a lick, having control over the feeling, and then you become aware of whatever feeling there is about a flat 7 in terms of the quality of the note in a blues. Every note has a little bit of a different feeling to it, and you need to be aware of that. Or if we go from this, the next shape was here. Same deal. If I want to emphasize those notes, I might play. Something like that. So it becomes much more useful. I don't just have a triadic shape. I can create a lick from that. And then let's go here. So same thing as we had done down here. We're going to go up here. One more time. And what starts to happen after a while is you become aware of those notes, the flat 7, in every position and the feeling of it. Or the major third. Or the 5th. And the feeling that you get out of your lick when you emphasize those dominant triadic tones.